I think they made it. Yeah, they made it back.
Gaming and technology are the talk of the party here with EloTalk.
Hello and welcome to EloChat, the podcast where we talk about what's new and upcoming in the realms of gaming, technology, and culture. As usual, my name is Justin, and I'm joined here by two awesome guests. We have Ziggy and Ian, and it's been a while. We haven't made a podcast in a bit, so how's everyone feeling? How are we doing? How's the vibe in the room today?
It's good. Thanks for the wonderful introduction, and Happy New Year's to everybody.
Yeah, it's 2017. We've made it. We went from 2016, 2017. We're here. We're ready to talk about all the stuff that's coming out this year. Lots of new stuff to talk about. But and also, hey, hello, Ian. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you doing?
It's what is today? February. Valentine's Day is coming up. We got cold weather here where I live. It's just been apocalyptic. Whatever. It's all good. And for the things that are new in other realms, let's going straight into it, because I talked about it a lot last year, and I was super excited about it last year. Final Fantasy 15 finally came out, and man, as I was saying in the last podcast, I was super excited and looking forward to this game, and I think it's really hard to... I think there's a challenge for Square to kind of live up to the hype and the expectations for 10 years of development. And when I saw that hit the shelves, it's a weird feeling of nostalgia. It's a weird feeling of expectations, but finally got my hands on it. And you did too, right, Ian?
Yeah, I was excited to have it come out. I had it pre-ordered, and I was annoying the crap out of my wife because I kept on checking the date as to how long it was going to be. I was extremely excited, and then promptly let down by my experience with the game.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was fun, but it wasn't Final Fantasy, and so that's what I've been wanting all these years, and it just didn't deliver Final Fantasy for me.
Well, I guess we're going to get right into our meat of the discussion real quick.
Man, you just disappointed Justin so hard there. He's been dying to do this Final Fantasy podcast, and you just dropped a bomb on him right now. You just you wrecked his dreams.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
Keep in mind, this is also Ian who gave No Man's Sky a 9.6, so obviously his taste of games are a little bit different than the majority, but that's okay. That's his opinion. And you know what? I didn't play the last Final Fantasy. I don't think I plan on to. I do enjoy the Final Fantasy series, but I don't know. So there's something about it too that doesn't really jive me. But what did you like about it, Justin? Tell us why you love it so much.
And I think that's such a complicated thing to answer, because I would even I can understand why Ian is disappointed by it. I think I can really understand why fans looked at Final Fantasy 15 and were let down, because it's so different, because it breaks away from the typical JRPG formula that we've seen in the past. I don't know. I'm gonna guess 20 games. More than that. There has to be more than that. But I think it's a really brave step for Square Enix to kind of take with this new formula, because I can guarantee you that this formula is going to be the Final Fantasy VII Remake formula. And I think that they were using 15 as kind of as a test drive to see if people liked this kind of format, and if they really felt comfortable with the direction that 7 was heading, because I promise you, I could almost bet money that if Final Fantasy 15 had failed, 7 wouldn't have come out for another 5 years. And that's kind of a big claim. But I feel like because of how new and recent the remake is coming, it's going to look very similar to 14. I don't know if you feel the same or not, Ian, but that's my interpretation behind the whole big step change, and then how that's going to leak into 7 when we see it come out finally.
If it does, I'm going to be very sad.
Well, you said you didn't like the story, though. But did you like the gameplay?
Okay. I didn't like just about anything in the game. I didn't dislike it, but it wasn't what I was looking for. I mean, don't get me wrong, the game is gorgeous. The magic and everything, it blends in really well. There wasn't issues with clipping and stuff like that, like you see in a lot of games. It wasn't what I was looking for in Final Fantasy. I wanted it to tickle the nostalgia, and it did not do that, in the very least.
Yeah, and I can totally understand that. And I think my expectations were a little bit different because I think I understood from the beginning that this wasn't going to be a very typical Final Fantasy game. I mean, as soon as we saw 13 happen, we knew that Final Fantasy was going to be going in a very different direction. And for me, like, I'm not a huge fan of turn-based combat. I definitely am. I can get into the zone of grinding and whatnot. But I really like the different steps that they've taken with combat and with story and with worlds. And I think 15 was a great combination of all of those things, all of those positive elements, except the plot. And I can totally get behind you with the plot thing. But I think to get back to Ziggy's original question that we kind of deviated from, the things that I liked. I really loved the world. I thought it was gorgeous. They did a really, really solid job of making a really put together, visually appealing, gorgeous world, and they knew it. Like, they sold it to you the moment that you started that game, and that was a really cool high point for me. I really liked the attention to detail with the building up of relationships with the boy band. I thought that was fun. That there's a lot of elements that really held that together, especially because you do so much driving in the game. The attention to detail with the conversation and how they kind of grow together as you play the game was really nice, and how it kind of resolves itself at the end. I really enjoyed I enjoyed the car. I thought it was kind of funny. It's kind of jarring just because it's Final Fantasy, so it's a little bit weird. I enjoyed the combat, and I think once we talk about things we dislike, I can get into more about some of the high and low points, but overall I really enjoyed the active response combat, the use of MP, and I really love the use of magic. I thought that was really interesting, and I really like just like I said, it goes back to that gorgeous like fighting and how all like the gorgeous world, the really fast combat kind of blended together to make a really nice experience. But those are kind of like my positives. I don't know. You, Ian, what do you think? What did you like? Tell me what you liked. I want to hear good things.
It looked good. Out of the things that I liked, I think that is the only thing. And I liked that we had chocobos.
Oh, dude, they look so good though.
But it was lacking. I didn't like how much it was lacking.
How do you think it would have been better then? Like, what was lacking for you?
Like, I mean, there's a lot. There's a lot that I didn't like, but the thing about the chocobos, like, as much as I like the chocobos, I use them all the time, is that I would have loved to see more with the chocobos and their colors and the things that they can do, like you saw with 7 and 9, where your different colored chocobos could do different things, because there wasn't really anything except you'd feed them, a different green, and they would do something different. They'd run faster and longer, stuff like that. But that was really the only difference in the chocobos.
So, from what I gather, from what I hear from Ian, I think, like, correct me if I'm wrong, Ian, is this like the big thing that it doesn't feel like a Final Fantasy game to you? Like, it feels like a different experience and one that you don't like, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, the genre's definitely taken a turn, especially Final Fantasy. I mean, it was like the lead game that all JRPGs look to, that all turn-based RPGs look to, and it was played as more of like a game that you could beat with just kind of doing this surface material across the top, but you could also deep dive and you could really dig into the chocobos and the stuff that it unlocks by doing that, the combat, all that kind of stuff. It was like the older games. Like, I understand that they were a different kind of game, but they had a much deeper dive, and Final Fantasy 15 didn't have that deep dive like the old Final Fantasy games did. It was just a lot of repetitive crap that wasn't any kind of progress, but just repetitive.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that you say that because I find like in a lot of games, like recently, Resident Evil, with Resident Evil 7, it kind of rebooted and it's something completely different than the past games that they've had. And it's really, it's done really well. And I was actually fairly impressed by it.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing is it Final Fantasy is just taking a turn, and it's not what I'm looking for. I mean, it was a good game, but it wasn't my game. It wasn't what I was looking for in it, and so it just didn't satisfy that craving, and I was let down. I mean, if I were to look at it from being a game other than Final Fantasy, if it had a different title than that, and I didn't have expectations going in, I think I'd like it. I mean, I played over 60 hours, so it's like I said, it's not like I didn't like the game. I just, I don't know. It didn't fit where it needed to for me.
Yeah, and to kind of jump in where we're talking about like things that were weak. I totally can understand where the plot was weak, and I know that the biggest discussion for the plot comes around chapter 13 and how frustratingly long and linear that chapter is, especially compared to the other chapters. But I think that there's a couple points to take away from the story, for me at least. I don't know if you agree or not, Ian. And I know that you'll have a different opinion since you didn't like it as much. But I understood the point of chapter 13 is that you're spending all this time, and the directors and the devs don't really know how long the players spent with the party until that point in the game. So once you hit chapter 13, you're isolated, you're alone. Like it's a very different gaming experience from the rest of the game, and I think that was just to reinforce the message of Noctis's growth as a character. But at the same time, I feel like they took something and like stretched it out just a little too much. I don't know if the intended effect was really felt, especially with American players. I can't really speak for other markets, but I don't think it was really felt with American players, especially with the reaction that it got. And another place where the plot really fell for me is just like I understand that the game was it was designed to be played quickly. The main plot was designed to be played very quickly, and then the game was supposed to kind of lead you into exploring the open world, and that's where it shines. And I get that, but a lot if you take a look at the back of the 30 years of Final Fantasy as a franchise, it's story heavy, and that's where a lot of its uniqueness and yes, definitely contrived details kind of come to play there. So with such a short story to supply such a really hefty overworld game, it kind of flips the balance, and I think that's kind of where the game kind of felt disjointed to me a little bit. And then some of the characters, especially Lunafreya, which is one of my favorite characters, I just wish that there was more. I think that the one place of the plot where I do like was the ending. I really liked the ending, and the story is just sad. Like, no matter how you look at it, the story is just a sad story, and I think that they handled that part pretty well.
All right, so quickly, out of 10, what would you both give the game?
Ian, you first.
So, like, my biases aside, I would put the game somewhere up around a 9 because it did have amazing music, it had amazing graphics. It was good. The way that they set up the game is that at the beginning of the game you had a lot of world content. You could do a lot of your exploring and side quests and all that kind of stuff. And then as soon as you're like, okay, I'm done with this, I'm ready to just get the story and be done with the crap, you could do the main storyline and then just finish it out in one long stretch and it's done. And so that's a little bit of a turn on how games usually are done, where you kind of unlock the open world. It was given to you at first and you got to end it, which was really nice because it meant that I didn't quit playing because I got too bored. So it had a lot of things going for it, and I'd give it I don't know, somewhere in a 9.4,
Okay,
9.5.
and now I want your biased opinion.
2. Like,
See, how do you do that? How do you go from 9 to 2? Like, you can't say this game is so amazing, and then on the other spectrum say that it's like a 2. Like 2 is like
because for me, it was
unbearably
horrible.
like unplayable. That's crazy talk,
Like, no,
man.
no. For me, the game was not what I wanted. It was not what I was expecting, and
But then, how do you give it a 9 on the other
because
spectrum?
it was
Like, that
a
doesn't make
great
sense.
game from the outside. But when you have a close tie to it, when you have a relationship with Final Fantasy like I do, it just let me down.
Oh man, we're gonna have to get you on the 5-star format instead of number format because I just don't understand it, bro.
I think he would have said a 4 and then a 1. Like, I don't think it would have helped that much.
Yeah. It would have been. It would
Yeah,
have
but
been like
then the game gets a 3 or a 2 or a 2.5. Like 2 is
Well, no,
pretty
I mean,
low.
I rate it well. Am I ever going to play it again? No, but it's a good game, just not my game. Not a good game for me. I mean, I want Final Fantasy VII remade and kept true to the original. And so Justin's blasphemy before is hurting my heart. But I'm going to hold on to my false hope.
I feel like you're going to be very sorely disappointed with the remake then, because
It's okay with it. I'm okay with that. I will acknowledge that I'm clinging on to something that doesn't exist because that's what I want.
Okay, so interesting. Like before you go into your rating, I actually quick question here, and maybe this will help kind of sort out like what you guys like in the Final Fantasy series. What would you say are your top 3 Final Fantasy games?
can we? Let me get my score in 15 first, because that's a big conversation. Because that's like 20 games that we have to talk about, and there's so many good ones.
No, but I just want the top 3. I just want to know the top 3 in order. I don't want like a big discussion about it. I just want, because I think that will tell a lot about what you guys like in the Final Fantasy series.
Do you want to go first thing, Ian, or do you want me to?
All right, so yeah, that's fine. So my scores, as a game, 9 for me. It's a 2 because what I want, my favorite Final Fantasy games in order would probably be 9, 12, and then it's a toss up between 7 and 10.
Interesting. Mine are, and I don't know if I can do particular order. 4, 12 as well. I really love 12, and Tactics Advance, and that's kind of purely nostalgia, but I love that game.
Wow, that's like totally different from mine because like mine, I'm 6, Tactics,
6
and
is
probably
good
7.
too. Did you say 7? Okay. No, 6 is really good too. There's so much good music in 6. Oh man. I don't know if I finished 6. I got like over halfway. But I know. I really want to finish it. I just haven't had time. But yeah, so going into my score of 15, I'm actually willing to be a little bit flexible with my score. If I like settled on it, I might give it like an 8.5. Because I'm totally willing to look at the game and be like, there's definitely flaws in here, and there's definitely things that they couldn't deliver on, and I think that there's some things that don't really work well in its current iteration, which I think that's another interesting part, is that we're now in this like gaming industry is now turning into where you can like patch the game, which I think that's interesting. I don't know if you want to talk about that later, but with all the like small issues I had, like the camera angles were terrible sometimes. The flying car was a cool thing, and then I realized that you have to land it perfectly or else you get a game over, and that's kind of bizarre. Like, there's just things that are just little things that kind of knock it down for me.
Dude, when you crash your car and as it's flying, you're gonna die.
Well, it's not only that, but it's more like it's a game over. Like, you go back to the main screen. Like, if you didn't save in a while and you do that, like, I don't know.
Well, if you didn't save in a while, that's your fault.
Come on, you played enough
Rule
Final
of
Fantasy to know
gaming,
you gotta be
save.
saving.
Sure. But I just thought they could have done a different kind of punishment for that, but that's just me. Anyway, yeah, so I'm willing to give the game an 8.5. And it's a beautiful game. And the music is great. and there's so many good things about it, and there's so many things about it that are just like, oh, if they only could have just tweaked this and just, it's so hard, especially with 10 years of hype, dude. Like that's so hard to follow up on. I commend Square for finally finishing production though.
See, from what I saw with people's reactions, I think while they were playing it, they were quite enjoying it. However, I think once they took a look back at it and stuff like that, they kind of like settled down, and they're like, oh, it was a good experience, but it was still missing a few things.
Yeah,
I'd say that's pretty accurate.
Ian, how do you feel about that whole thing where they're talking about adding patches to the game like that will change Chapter 12? Those events that they're doing for the game right now that I actually haven't played yet. But what are your thoughts on that? Because I think that's pretty darn interesting, but I don't know how I feel about it.
I don't like it because it's changing the game. Like, the game is what it is, and they should stick to it. So changing it, I'm not a fan of that. Now, adding like an alternate chapter, something like that, like a alternate timeline kind of a thing, because it does have that bit of a time travel-y feel to the game. And so if they wanted to do that, like, here were the events of Chapter 12, and if you didn't like that, or any of the chapters, you didn't like that, and we want to patch it, make it to where you can go back in time and redo that chapter, and that'll change the story, then that's cool. You can do that. But just changing it outright, I don't like the idea of that. Or if they make it, if you're playing through the first time, you get to choose, hey, here's the happy story, here's the not so happy story, then whatever, you can play it one way and then you can play it the other way. It's not a problem with that. But I don't think, if the way they implement it is just to, here's the change, there's no going back, I don't like that.
Yeah. And I totally agree with you. I think I bought Final Fantasy 15 as the game originally came out, and then to significantly change the product to the point where you're alternating the main plot of the game, that to me is really strange. I agree with you that if they wanted to present you with a branching timeline or some sort of alternate, I feel like that would be a better way to handle it. But to change the game of Final Fantasy 15 through a patch, that seems really strange. And in my mind, it comes across as like a defeatist attitude. Like, the producers of the game looked at people's reactions and saw how negative they were, and the consumer won in a weird way. It's kind of like that. It's like that Mass Effect thing that happened, but to me on a bigger scale, because this is something that could be happening.
The difference between the Mass Effect one, though, the Mass Effect one was more of a continuation of the ending and explaining it more, as opposed to outright changing it. And I think that's where Ian has a big problem with it.
Me too. Like, yeah. I don't think that it's necessarily a good idea to just outright change it. And yeah, thanks for the clarification on that, because I actually haven't played Mass Effect. But yeah, I think that changing the overall product in such a drastic way is really strange and kind of defeats the purpose.
I mean, if they want to fix it, they could just fix all the things that I hated about the game, and I'm cool with that.
Check out Ian's newest article on EloTalk.
Yeah,
Just
I should write an article about what I didn't like about it.
It'd be a very salty article.
It would be. Like, by the end of it, you'd be like, wow, this guy needs some help.
But hey, at least you're able to be honest about how you felt about the game, even with that amount of hype behind it. And I think that's important, because there's a lot of people that will like blindly like things for the sake of liking it. So I think it's good to have a realistic sense of, this game is not for everyone.
Well,
that's cool.
I think we've also realized that when Ian reviews things, he reviews with emotion. Because, I mean, he literally went from a 9 to like a 2.
No, I review it without emotion, because when emotion is involved, that's when it gets a score like a 2. But, to step back from it and look at it, I mean, it really does deserve a lot more, because there was a lot put into it.
Right, but I mean, like, let's say if you would
take into account the 12-year development cycle. Ugh.
But if you would have made this an article, right, you would have gave it a 9, but like in your article, you would have talked about all these bad parts about it. So the 9
No,
square.
I would have talked about what it did do. Like I could write another article about like Final Fantasy and how it's changed, or like an opinion piece. But just
All right, I'm
talking about
convinced
the
Ian
game
has a split
is
personality.
different.
Just outright. I'm just kidding.
So basically, the consensus is Final Fantasy was not what everyone expected, and that's okay.
Pretty much, I think everyone was expecting something different.
Yeah. And when, like I said, when you have that much hype with it, like that train is really hard to slow down. Ugh, especially with 10 years behind it.
Although, talking about a Final Fantasy game that, switched and had a big patch that changed everything, that leads us to Final Fantasy 14, which they completely rebooted it and actually made it playable. And I know you...
Oh my gosh, that's like
it was
old
so
news.
playable
No,
before.
I know, but I mean, it can work in terms of that. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
But I feel like that's such a different game. Like this is an MMO. Like that.
Well,
MMO.
I mean-
but name me another game or MMO that has actually done that.
Well, none has ever had such a catastrophic failure.
Well,
That's not
that's
true.
kind of what they're talking about with the end of 15, isn't it? At the end of 15, they're talking about changing it pretty drastically. Like 14 definitely had a ton of changes, but I think they're kind of taking the same thing into 15 and going, "Hey, people didn't like this. Let's make them like it."
Yeah, but at the same time, they took the old formula of 14 and like trashed it completely.
But Ian, what
So-
if they changed the game to the part where you like the game?
Well, of course I'd like that, but it still wouldn't be the same game. It'd be like you title it like Final Fantasy 15, the way it should have been.
The Ian edition.
The Ian edition. I would feel so special.
Oh my god. Well, yeah, and going back to 14, I mean, they are adding new things to it, and the expansion Stormblood is coming out, and I am so excited because I've seen the things that they've released for it, and I'm so hyped.
Well,
Let
Yeah.
me tell you something. Out of MMOs right now, I feel like Final Fantasy 14 is so good, but I'm also really biased, and I put like over 1,000 hours into this game, so I have a bit of a bias.
I mean, I have to agree, and I don't really have a bias. When 14 first came out, I loved 14. Then they did a Realm Reborn, and I actually quit for a long time because I couldn't stand a Realm Reborn. And just
Hold on.
yeah, I liked the original.
you
I
liked the original 14? It was literally unplayable.
Absolutely.
Wow.
It was
You have-
awesome. It was what I wanted in an MMO.
Okay.
I mean, so
Wow.
much about that game was great. And it was definitely different. It was a game that was hard. You had to hit all your buttons. There was no real just spamming abilities like there are now. The crafting system was
You can't
difficult.
spam?
You can spam buttons.
Oh my god, okay. Ian, you are officially like the dad effect for me. Like, my dad
The what?
effect is basically, if my dad likes something, I'll like completely the opposite thing, and that's what you are for me. I've come to terms.
All right,
Dang, you've just been dadded.
it's okay.
Again.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. I mean, it probably means you should play 15 because you might like it then.
Oh my god. Well, and we can talk about the mechanics of 14 and how you're completely wrong in a different episode.
Well, to
But-
finish it, I actually came back to the game and I've been playing it recently, and I do like where it is. I've been playing it and
Oh, wow.
enjoying it. So it's not
Oh.
what it was when it first came out, but I have to agree with you that out of MMOs right now, it's one of the best. I just stopped playing WoW not too long ago and came back to Final Fantasy, and they are doing things the right way. And I see with each expansion, I've been watching it while not playing it, but with each expansion, they seem to be adding in the things that they need to make it fun and exciting.
Mhm. Yeah, and that's why I'm really excited about Stormblood, because I feel like Yoshi and his team have really taken 14 and given it so much love and attention, because it was in such a desperate state of crisis by the end of the 1.x cycle that it just needed the dedication of someone who really understood how MMOs work. And I really appreciate Yoshi's attention to his game. And I can totally see that the game is not perfect. It's not for everyone. Like I keep saying with all sorts of games, like tab targeting MMOs is probably not for everyone, and I totally get that. But with what they have, I think the game, it looks good. I think that they definitely need to fix some like clipping issues, but what can you do with an MMO that looks that good? The music is incredible. I love the music of Final Fantasy in every game, and 14 is no exception. Heavensward music is so good. And the classes are really good. I like the unique way that you can have one character but all the jobs. And I think that with Stormblood coming out with the new jobs and a good, hefty story coming out, I'm really excited to see where they take the world that they've built up and the lore that they have, and taking it into places where we could possibly see some really, really cool content in 4.0. So I'm really excited about Stormblood.
What is Stormblood adding to the mix, like as opposed to the previous expansion and the norm? Like I've been away from Final Fantasy 14. I do agree it is one of the better MMOs and one of the only ones that are worthy of a subscription, so to speak. So what is it but Stormblood that that it's trying to get people to get either come back to it or continue playing?
Outside of the biggest draw for a lot of people is new jobs. And they're introducing Red Mage, and we actually have the Europe Fan Fest coming up in, I think, a week or two. And they're going to announce the second job there, I'm pretty sure. Even though we're pretty positive that the second job is going to be Samurai. So, which is, I believe, an old throwback to Final Fantasy XI that people are really looking forward to. There's speculation that the next job could be like Dancer or Blue Mage or something, but I don't think that those are going to happen, especially Blue Mage. That'd be really hard. But it's looking like those jobs are coming to the game. Like I said, the story, they did... So, to kind of give you an idea, the 1.x story is pretty good. The middle story between A Realm Reborn, which is the core story, and Heavensward is kind of bad. And then Heavensward is really good. Like, they did a really good job with their story. And I'm really excited to see how they expand the story. We're going to probably see new explorable areas. We can swim underwater, which might introduce a lot of new mechanics to the game. We're going to see all sorts of expansion. We're going to see a lot of quality of life improvements that are going to be really great. They're dropping PS3 support, so there's going to be a lot of updates. Not major, I don't think, but there's going to be a lot of just kind of going off that quality of life upgrade. So there's a lot of changes coming. The game will just probably just be better, and I couldn't ask for anything else.
I'm just going to throw it out there, but the Samurai class was actually Final Fantasy V.
Well,
when it first came out.
It was in 11 as well.
I think.
No, I know it was in 11, but he made it sound like.
No. I know it's in other games. But I think they're throwing it back to 11 because it's the other MMO, and it was a tank.
Right. I see what you mean.
I mean, you can't have ninja without having samurai. Like they go hand in hand in the Final Fantasy games. Wherever you see one, you end up seeing another. So I think it was kind of inevitable to see it.
Well, I don't think you saw a samurai in 4, and one of your characters was a ninja.
Nope. It was 5 as the first one.
It was a good addition.
Yeah.
But yeah, so those are the things I'm really looking forward to. Plus a lot more that I like. When someone asks you what your favorite food is and you forget what every kind of food is out there, I feel like that right now. I know that there's a lot of stuff coming to Final Fantasy 14, and I'm really excited. And
I want a Gambler class. I think the Gambler class would be funny.
Gambler?
Jeez, yeah, just use your gil as your skill sets.
Man,
so you literally just
that would be pretty
crafters
awesome.
Would be insanely overpowered if you used your gil because they make so much money.
But at the same time, it means you also have to keep up, right? It'd be interesting. It probably wouldn't work, but I think it'd be fun.
No, I think that'd be interesting.
Talk about a pay-to-win mechanic.
Right?
Literally.
You'd be employing so many gold farmers.
I didn't farm for the raid, so I'm going to go to the gold farmers and grab a bunch of gil.
Exactly. But, yeah, so that's that's Stormblood for me in a nutshell. I don't know if I know that you're just getting back into it, Ian, but I didn't know if there was anything that you were looking forward to. Because you said that you've been watching the development cycles, right?
Yeah, I mean, the thing that has me the most excited is I've been watching the development cycles, and I see that they're moving in what I think is the right direction. They're not just adding one new class, and that's kind of an MMO thing. Oh, new expansion, a new class. Well, this is multiple new classes, and that's kind of how they've done their releases. And so I'm looking forward to that because it's just a lot more to be able to play, and it seems like the end game has a lot more to it than a lot of other MMOs do, and so that's it's a great advantage because you get to the end game and it's not okay. Well, I can grind this same crap over and over and over again, hoping for a better drop. Because that gets boring to me.
Are you end game right now?
With how? No, I'm not end game right now. I'm getting closer, but then the expansion is going to come out, and I'm going to be even further behind. But the thing is, I'm actually looking forward to end game. Whereas other MMOs in the past, I've played them, and then I get to end game, and I get bored. But in Final Fantasy, the way that it's all set up is, you start up a new class, you have a lot of crafting to do. There's a lot of stuff to do, and that's what they add in other classes that you have to go and learn and level up and stuff like that. So it's different than other MMOs where you kind of hit the end game and get stagnant. It seems like there's always more to do, and as long as they keep on developing with that in mind, then the game won't get old.
So from what I understand, Ian, in terms of MMOs, you're more of the, I don't want to say like the casual MMO player, but the ones that really likes more like the story-based driven, like the questing and the leveling up and getting like your skills up, as opposed to like end game raid grinding.
No, I like end game progression and raid grinding. What I don't like about a lot of MMOs is that you get to the end, and I don't mean like, oh, we're doing the last raid and we're farming it like that. That's boring. When you're farming the same thing, you're killing the same boss every week for 3 months straight, hoping for one item to drop. Like that's boring as all hell. As long as there's other ways to get that item through, or a comparable item through crafting or questing or this or that, you always have something to work towards. But when you're relying 100% on drops off of a boss, then you're just sitting there banging your head against the wall hoping for it to drop one of those weeks, and that's boring. It's not that I don't like raiding, because I like it as long as there's progression, because then you're working towards something. But once you get to the final boss, you have it on farm status, there's not really anything to do anymore.
Yeah, and I mean, you kind of do get to that point when you get to 14. Like right now, I am raiding the latest Savage raid. But even outside of that, the instances are fun. Like the new 24-man raid that they just released in the newest expansion, patch 3.5. It's Dunscaith, and it's awesome. Like playing it with other people can be really frustrating because people don't really pay attention to mechanics or whatever. But the instance is so cool that it ties together nice. So there's a lot of stuff to do, like you were saying. There's crafting. You have to do things with dailies all the time. You always have to level something up. There's always something to do unless you're like a hardcore grinder and you blow through it really fast. Plus, if you play it with friends, it makes it a lot more interesting and more engaging. So the addition of the feature of free companies has been really, really good in the game, and really helps foster this community of people playing together. And they added that cross-server party finder that helped too. So it brings that sense of community back into the game. So it was really great.
Well, one of the things that's also great about the game is that, and I think it's one of the best moves that they made that I really love, is that they did release it on console.
Yeah.
And so, when I get to that end game where I'm doing a lot of crafting and, I might be running some dungeons kind of, trying to get a better piece of gear or something, it's not going to be where I have to like dedicate time for myself to go do that. I can just throw it up on the TV, sit on the couch, hang out with the family a lot more than being stuck at a computer doing it. So there's a lot more ways to enjoy that end game content, and it's a little bit more open and family friendly when it does get to that part that I'm going to call boring. So that's one of my major sells with the game, is that I think that the boring stuff won't be as boring, and it also won't be too hard to find stuff to do.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why it's been so nice to see this development cycle for Stormblood, because I'm really excited to see what they do with the game, and I'm pretty confident about the future of it. So, I'm pretty stoked.
All right, enough about Final Fantasy XIV. Let's talk about, the highly anticipated Final Fantasy VII Remake. Now, of course, when they announced this, I think it shocked a lot of people because everybody wanted the remake, but they were not expecting it to be, done in episodes. And I think, that's made a lot of people kind of wary about this. What do you guys think about the new format for it? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think that like one of the biggest shocks, like aside from the episode thing, is that they said that they were not going to remake it. Like they were like, no, we will not remake 7. And so then it shocked people, and then they say that it's episodic, and then it shocks people even more because kind of like me with Final Fantasy 15, I was wanting, my Final Fantasy, the Final Fantasy I remember coming back to me, and it definitely shakes it up. But I think that out of all the Final Fantasy games, 7 is the one that is really set up in its own episodes anyways. So I think it's the game that is going to be able to take that format and run with it the most.
Plus, I think Square Enix handles episodes really well. The latest Hitman game had an episodic build to it, and they did really good with it. Like, it was really solid from what I heard, and people really enjoyed that kind of format, and they made it so that the episodes were interesting, and it had like an investment in it so that people could come back and replay it. So I'm not really too concerned about episodic releases of 7, especially because the fact that this game is going to be huge. If it's going to look the way that 15 does, this game is going to be giant. And so I would have been surprised if they released it as a single game and kept true to everything that people were expecting in the first place. Because, I mean, if you think back to the original release, didn't it come out on like 4 discs?
Yeah.
Yes, but keep in mind that at the time it was like CD, DVD, right? So it was a lot smaller in terms of that. And
plus the storage
disc
is better.
space was smaller. Yeah,
so I probably shouldn't underestimate that too. But
right. But I mean, you know what? And like you said, they did a really good job with Hitman, and a lot of episode games I have actually been very impressed with, like especially some of the Telltale games. And those have been really, really good. I think what Ian was saying about originally they weren't going to do a remake, and then they shocked everybody. But I mean, to be honest, they were kind of forced to do the remake because way too many people wanted the remake to be made. And it's just interesting that they kind of did it this way. I kind of think it's actually better that they kind of did it this way as opposed to just rehashing the original to like updated graphics and things like that, because I still think like even going back to Final Fantasy VII now, playing it and stuff like that, the gameplay is very dated, no matter what graphics you put it in or whatnot. And I think because the strong part of Final Fantasy VII, I thought the story was pretty strong. I mean, it was confusing for some people, I suppose. But I think if they're able to capture that story really well in the episode format and in those incredible graphics, I think they'll do okay. I still think there'll still be a lot of people that are, disappointed or whatever.
I think that any opportunity to skip Midgar is a plus.
Can you put your headset on?
If in the way that they do their episodes is that if you can skip things like that, it would be fantastic. Because I know that going back and replaying that game, Midgar was the single thing that like I would get halfway through Midgar and go, okay, I'm done, I'm bored, and then not play it through again because that part was just so obnoxious for me.
Yeah, and I totally agree. And like I remember coming back to it and I've been like, damn, it's so hard on the eyes. Like even, and I remember it's funny because like back in the day, you're like, oh, these graphics are so amazing, especially with all the summons being like so beautifully rendered at the time. And then you look back at it and you're like, wow, this is very primitive. And you know, I kind of wish that they didn't go back to Final Fantasy VII in terms of that, because I think if they did in an episode format, they're kind of like shooting themselves in the foot, because like we all know the story. Well, maybe this is maybe more for the new generation to to get incorporated with the story. But I think, I don't know, like I kind of feel like revisiting it and doing the same story and things like that, it'll be kind of interesting in a way that it'll be interesting how they're gonna pull it off. And
Well, and I'd always said that, I've said this since like high school, that they would. I knew that Square would remake 7, and that sounds really pretentious. I'm sorry, I know, but I knew that they would say that they would remake 7 because whenever Square needed money, they had a moneymaker in the bank, and that was a remake of 7. And they just finished the development of a really intensive game. I mean, 15 took like 10 years, and that probably cost so much money. And the fact that 14 is still going, and MMOs are super expensive, and they're just coming out with a expansion for it. So I'm sure that Square could use some hype and money. So yeah, I kind of have a feeling that 7 will be remade, and I think that doing the episodes just kind of reinforces the fact that like they're looking for opportunities to make money, but hopefully they're going to do it in a way that's faithful to the people who are buying it. So they're not just doing an episodic release to find a cheap way to make money, but they're doing it because they can give us a product that we really want, and they want us to support them with the amount of money that it's going to cost. So I'm excited to see what happens with 7. I think that it's very promising, and I still think, Ian, that it's gonna look a lot like 15. Like the combat and the way that the world is set up, I feel like it's gonna be like 15.
Don't crush my dreams. Don't do it.
I don't want to crush your dreams. I feel like that's what's gonna happen. But correct me. I mean, if it comes out in a different way and I'm wrong, like I will totally take that bullet, and that's fine. But actually, as a final point from me, even though I don't sound super excited, and it's probably because I never finished 7 because it came out when I was a lot younger. I have it now. I'll finish it sometime. But I'm really excited to see that they're bringing back such a beloved title and making it look that good. I always get super excited when Square is announcing a new game because they always make it look good. And so having that nostalgia in like HD and whatever else they add to it, I think that'll be pretty sweet. I don't know if you have anything else to add to that one, though.
Nah, that sums it up pretty well. I mean, we're all crossing our fingers and hoping that they do a good job with it and they do the game justice.
Yeah, I mean, you know what? Like I said, as long as that they pull off the story really well, and I think it also is going to be if it runs well too. I think if the game comes up with a bunch of bugs and everything, it's just going to make everyone so angry because they've been waiting for this for such a long time. And I think that's another thing that they have going against them. But I think if they're willing, if they're going to pull it off, which I think they're going to invest a lot of time into this, because I think they realize that Final Fantasy 7 is beloved by so many, and if they screw this up, it's going to be very bad for them.
Yeah. Well, here's the Square Enix. Oh man, 30 years of Final Fantasy, and I'm actually really excited to see, like I said, like we keep saying, where it goes in the future. So, with the new year, we'll see new growth from Square Enix and the franchise. And you can always catch our reactions here on the podcast. I'm sure that we'll be doing more episodes like this, especially when 7 comes out, whenever that will be. And I know that I would really like to talk about Stormblood when it hits this summer. So make sure to tune in. And I think that that's going to be all the time that we have for this episode. But before we go, I just wanted to remind folks that we have a really awesome team of people who support all of our content creation. We've been bringing on some new folks who are doing some amazing work in the background to make sure that things run smoothly and that we can give you things in really awesome quality. And that stuff obviously costs money, and we would love to have the support of the community so we can make this stuff like this and continue to bring you content. Like on our website, EloTalk.com, we do articles, daily articles about all sorts of different things in the gaming world. We have our podcast. We're thinking about going into video. We have a lot of places where we'd like to give you content. And we have a Patreon at patreon.com/EloTalk, where we are taking support from people who listen to our podcasts, to read our articles, to help us and support us in keeping EloTalk going. We have a list of rewards that range from being called an EloCat to having personalized videos and getting exclusive content. So make sure you head over to our Discord page, and if you can contribute, all of us really appreciate it. And we're grateful for the support that we've gotten so far. But until next time, and until we have another huge discussion about Final Fantasy, I'm sure one of these days, my name is Justin. I've really enjoyed being with you guys today. Big thanks to Ian and Ziggy for joining me as co-hosts for this episode. And a big thank you to Lewis, who is our guy in the back. He's helping us with all of our podcast creation, because without people who know what they're doing, I mean, the podcast won't sound as awesome as it will, or as it does. So thank you guys for coming.
Thanks.
Yeah. And like